Hello, everyone. My name is Steve, and welcome back to American Steam Legacy. When the United States Railroad Administration's Builders Committee set to work on developing the 12 USRA locomotive types, they tried wherever possible to use existing designs that were already in service and had developed a reputation for solid performance. While the origins of some USRA designs are well documented, the origins of others continue to be a murky issue. The USRA heavy and light Santa Fes are one design for which there is no definitive design basis, only an array of possibilities. Some have questioned whether the Santa Fe was even necessary since the USRA was offering Mikados and compound articulateds as viable options. To the Builders Committee's credit, they were able to get a good read on the needs and tendencies of American railroads and tried to offer standardized designs to accommodate them. So maybe the Santa Fe type wasn't surplus to requirements after all. Coming up next, we'll take a look at the story of the USRA Santa Fe on American Steam Legacy. Since the members of the Builders Committee were drawn from the three major locomotive manufacturers, Baldwin, Lima, and Alco, it's safe to assume they had a fairly clear idea of what the railroads wanted based on the output of their respective firms. The notion that a locomotive type was included just for the sheer hell of it or to bring the total USRA standards to an even 12 is very unlikely. Unless there are other unknown factors in play, I think it's safe to assume that these guys knew what they were doing. By 1917, the compound articulated and the 210-2 had been in service on American railroads for about 14 years. Railroads needing high tractive effort under one boiler favored one almost to the exclusion of the other. For railroads that were hesitant to embrace the articulated compound, the USRA offered a heavy and light version of the still popular 210-2 Santa Fe. Since some of the Santa Fes already in service were reaching the limits of what a built-up locomotive frame could handle, the USRA's 210-2s were not by any means the most powerful or the heaviest Santa Fes of this time period. The Builders Committee was looking for a more balanced design for the heavy Santa Fe. They wanted a locomotive that would perform well in drag freight service, but were careful to avoid such a high power output that it would aggravate the build-up frame's tendency to loosen up under hard use. What emerged was a rather large locomotive. The heavy Santa Fe shared the same height and width as the USRA 2882, so railroads capable of rostering one could easily accommodate the other. However, on some railroads, the length of available turntables was too short for an 8-coupled articulated, so the heavy Santa Fe was the next best option. Whether the USRA selected one particular 210-2 on which to pattern their heavy Santa Fe is unknown, but the consensus seems to be the Wabash L1 class. All of the possible prototypes had drivers somewhere around 63 inches in diameter. The same can be said for cylinder bore and stroke, while engine weight and adhesion factor varied greatly. While the L1s were the most recent among the possibility, it calls into question of how much of a service record could the L1s have compiled by the time the USRA started work on their heavy Santa Fe. Whatever the case may be, historians have seemed to have zeroed in on the Wabash L1 class since it most closely resembles what the USRA came up with. Driver diameter, boiler pressure, and cylinder bore are all very close to the USRA heavy Santa Fe. The USRA managed to shed over 24,000 pounds of engine weight, dropping the adhesion factor to just over 4, but tractive effort saw a healthy increase of over 4,100 pounds. In 1918, 175 USRA heavy Santa Fes were built. The Pennsylvania Railroad took the lion's share of the production, 130 to be exact. The Pennsylvania Railroad was one of those railroads that hadn't yet embraced articulated power. In fact, they held it in contempt. So heavy conventional power was the way to go as far as the Pennsy was concerned. The railroad stated that the heavy Santa Fe handled tonnage in a satisfactory manner, but complained that the long wheelbase led to premature wheel flange wear on the first set of drivers. The USRA responded by saying that that shouldn't be a problem since the locomotive was designed to operate on curves as sharp as 19 degrees. The Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy claimed rough riding or pounding due to the heavy side rods, while the Bessemer and Lake Erie claimed their existing 210-2s were more powerful than the USRA variant. Oddly enough, the Bessemer and Lake Erie would retire their own 210-2s in 1943 while keeping the USRA Santa Fe's in service until 1947. Perhaps the highest praise came from the St. Louis and San Francisco. They reported being pleased with the locomotive's performance and declaring the heavy Santa Fe first class in every respect. They even went so far as to state they were using the heavy USRA 210-2 in lieu of their own Alco-built 2882s of 1910. The origins of the USRA Light Santa Fe are even less clear, even though the list of possibilities is much shorter. To get some idea of where the Builders Committee may have been looking, we need to find pre-war 210-2s that rode on 57-inch drivers and see which one most closely represents the USRA design. The New York, Ontario, and Western Class X bears the closest resemblance to the USRA Light Santa Fe. Boiler pressure saw a modest increase to 200 psi, and the engine weight was nearly identical. The cylinder bore and stroke of the USRA variant was carried over from the Heavy Mikado, while the boiler and firebox dimensions were the same as the Heavy Mountain. Another possibility is the USRA used the Heavy Santa Fe as the basis for the Light 210-2. It's possible the Builders Committee may have chopped down the Heavy Santa Fe to something they thought would perform well while riding on 57-inch drivers. This is purely speculation, but it's an interesting thought. As for the purpose of the Light Santa Fe, the USRA believed it to be an attractive option for railroads with weight restrictions or tight clearances but still needed high tractive effort power. While there were many smaller railroads that fit this description, even large railroads had to keep heavy mainline power off certain parts of their system for the same reasons. So it's not completely accurate to say that the Light 210-2 was unnecessary. The number of Light Santa Fe's produced suggests it was more of a specialty item rather than something intended to appeal to a mass market. In 1918, 94 USRA Light Santa Fe's were built, with the Southern Railroad receiving the largest allotment of 50. The Seaboard Airline received 15, while the Boston and Albany took 10. The remaining 19 were parsed out in small numbers to other various railroads. While praise for the Light Santa Fe was hard to come by, the complaints run in the same vein as those for the Heavy 210-2. Excessive driver wheel flange wear was a common shortcoming expressed by the railroads. The Boston and Albany attributed this to a lack of lateral motion devices on the first set of drive wheels, apparently failing to realize the Light Santa Fe came with these devices as standard equipment. The Light Santa Fe was also plagued with frequent pilot truck derailments. The USRA suggested adding weight to the pilot and removing coils from the trailing truck centering springs. The USRA would have done well to share this advice with railroads experiencing excessive drive wheel flange wear, since these two issues are linked. Since the axle loading on the Light Santa Fe's pilot was rather modest, softer centering springs were likely used to prevent the centering device from pushing the pilot wheels off the track when negotiating a sharp curve. With the influence of the pilot truck being greatly reduced, driver flange wheel wear became a knock-on effect. The Light Santa Fe also developed a reputation for being slippery, with an adhesion factor just under the magic number of 4. Rough riding qualities were also among the complaints, but unlike the Heavy Santa Fe, the rough ride was attributed to the 57-inch drivers being too small for fast freight. The USRA's 210-2s continued to be produced into 1919. Even though the USRA was still in control, the 165 Santa Fe's built that year were ordered directly by the railroads that needed them. Not surprisingly, they were all the heavy variety, with the Illinois Central placing the largest order for 125. Of the 12 USRA standard locomotive types, the Santa Fe was the second least copied design. The 6-coupled articulated was never copied, while 4 Baldwin-built USRA Heavy Santa Fe's were built for the Chicago, Illinois, and Midland between 1927 and 1929. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And once again, my name's Steve, and thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.